The special counsel team was stock full of Trump-hating Democrats. Mueller himself was the only known Republican. Mueller shouldn't have been leading them because President Trump told Mueller why he fired Comey when Mueller went to the White House on May 16th of 2017, which was the day before Rod Rosenstein assigned him as special counsel. Hearing that reason made Mueller a witness in his own investigation, which is illegal.
He may not be the brightest fellow, but I have to say I think he's smarter than to put himself before a committee in which Republicans will be questioning him, as you all say, closely.
Millions of Americans today maintain genuine concerns about your work, in large part because of the infamous and widely publicized bias of your investigating team members, which we now know included 14 Democrats and 0 Republicans. That team of Democrat investigators you hired donated more than $60,000 to the Hillary Clinton campaign and other Democratic candidates. Your team also included Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, which have been discussed today, and they had the lurid text messages that confirmed they openly mocked and hated Donald Trump and his supporters, and they vowed to take him out.
Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were eventually removed for their undeniable bias. And once again, special counsel group members Zainab Ahmad and Andrew Weissmann knew Bruce Ohr had been transmitting dossier information from Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson prior to the election, which should have disqualified them from serving. Andrew Weissmann was an infamous dirty trickster. His critics have accused him of having unethical behavior, manipulating the legal system, misleading jurists, intimidating innocent people, and making up crimes that don't exist to charge people with. Weissmann was so bad, he'd had multiple convictions overturned upon appeal, including with a unanimous vote at the Supreme Court level.
Andrew Weissmann attended Hillary Clinton's election night party. Weissmann wrote an email to Deputy Attorney General Yates stating, "I am so proud and in awe," regarding her disobeying a direct order from the president. Ms. Jeannie Rhee represented Hillary Clinton in litigation regarding personal emails originating from Clinton's time as Secretary of State. Aaron Zeldley, the guy sitting next to you, represented Justin Cooper, a Clinton aide who destroyed one of Clinton's mobile devices. I can't imagine a single prosecutor or judge that I have ever appeared in front of would be comfortable with these circumstances where over half of the prosecutorial team had a direct relationship to the opponent of the person being investigated.
Trust me, if there was collusion or obstruction to be found, these guys would have found it. All right, guys, we got nothing on obstruction and nothing on collusion. But if we say that, our friends are going to be in jail faster than a speeding Clinton body count bullet. We're totally screwed on collusion. We're going to have to admit that no one in the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. But I've concocted a nefarious plan that relies on the media and the congressional Democrats supporting us while we twist and misinterpret the law. We're going to be distorting obstruction of justice and the OLC, Office of Legal Counsel guidelines. I've got a list of 10 instances that can be misinterpreted as obstruction of justice to help our cause. Trust me, I want to see Trump go down more than anybody. I was there that night at her victory party, you see. She was dressed all in black with a tall, pointy hat. Her green skin had a special glow upon it that could only be described as breathtaking. And when the unthinkable happened, I wept. I wept uncontrollably. I cried more tears than there were drops of water in the whole of the ocean. More than anything, I wanted to take Hillary gently into my arms and console her in that carnal, primal way that a man consoles a woman. But alas, I was too late. She had flown away on her broom.
If you think that was a fairly written report, imagine who was writing it. Andrew Weissmann, who was crying at Hillary Clinton's funeral or whatever that was, when she paused.
My memory is not what it used to be. My memory is not what it used to be.
Which president appointed you to become the United States Attorney for Massachusetts?
Which senator?
Which president?
Oh, which president? I think that was President Bush.
According to my notes, it was President Ronald Reagan had the honor to do so.
And when you see Bob Mueller in that pathetic display, you know what happened. Weissmann did it all. He made sure that Roger Stone was arrested in the middle of the night with SWAT teams.
They put Paul Manafort into solitary confinement and brought him out 9 times, nine, and said, "Are you ready to tell us that the president knew about the Trump Tower meeting prior to the meeting?" Which wouldn't have been a crime in any event, but they were going to make it one. But, they tried to get people to give false information about the president so that they could bring the collusion charge.
Bob Mueller slept through this event from beginning to end, and today his ignominious finale showed him asleep at the hearing.
As you know, obstruction of justice is broken down into 3 elements. 1, there was a pending federal judicial proceeding. 2, the defendant knew of the proceeding. And 3, the defendant had corrupt intent to interfere with or attempted to interfere with the proceeding. Outside of the rare confession, the 3rd element, corrupt intent, makes obstruction very hard to prove when there was no crime committed. 2 people can look at the exact same situation and interpret the motives of a defendant completely differently.
If somebody knows they did not conspire with anybody from Russia to affect the election, and they see the big Justice Department with people that hate that person coming after them, and then a special counsel appointed who hires dozen or more people that hate that person, and he knows he's innocent. He's not corruptly acting in order to see that justice is done. What he's doing is not obstructing justice. He is pursuing justice, and the fact that you ran it out 2 years means you perpetuated injustice.
And remember, for obstruction of justice to stick, it has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is easy to find when you're innocent. Let's look at one of the examples on my list.
Don McGahn didn't carry out an obstruction
That wasn't
and
an obstruction.
saved him.
He could have
Firing Mueller?
He had a perfect right to fire Mueller. Mueller, at that time, he had several good reasons to fire Mueller. Mueller had substantial conflicts of interest. He had hired a staff that was so prejudiced, it shocks any prosecutor who's fair. He hired a person who was the chief counsel to the Clinton Foundation to investigate Donald Trump. My God, if I were investigating Hillary Clinton and I hired the person who ran the Trump Foundation, I think the media would go nuts on me. So that was a legitimate reason to want to fire Mueller for very, very bad judgment. Remember, he's the President of the United States. Mueller is not an independent counsel. Mueller works for the Justice Department. He could have been fired at any moment. And unless you could show that he wasn't going to replace him with somebody to take over the investigation like you did with Comey, you'd have no obstruction.
There you go. Reasonable doubt. And you can make the same argument with the other 9 instances I have here. If we had to take this obstruction case to court, we'd be laughed at. Mightily. That's why we can't recommend indicting the president on obstruction. So instead, we're not going to make a determination on obstruction. We'll leave it up in the air and issue a one-sided report that's full of lies and smears the president. The media and the people who hate President Trump won't have the ability to look at the situation objectively. And they'll cry he obstructed justice when we all know he didn't. Ha 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 ha.
But Andy, how will we be able to explain that we were able to reach a conclusion on collusion, but not obstruction?
That's where the OLC guidelines come in, dollface. We'll say we didn't make a recommendation on obstruction because the OLC guidelines say you can't indict a sitting president.
I gotta bust your chops for a minute here. The OLC guidelines say you can't indict a sitting president. They don't say you can't say whether or not you believe a crime was committed. Ken Starr said he thought Bill Clinton was guilty on multiple counts. And after he was out of office, Bill Clinton had his Arkansas law license suspended for 5 years and had to pay a fine. The legal precedent has already been set. I don't think people are going to fall for this.
Mueller could have written up, just like Ken Starr did many years ago, I find the president did this and he's guilty. I find he committed perjury here and he's guilty. And, one after another with Ken Starr. And he could have done that. That doesn't mean that the president gets indicted. That means that he said he found sufficient evidence for an indictment.
You noted 8 times in your report that you had a legal duty under the regulations to either prosecute or decline charges. Despite this, you disregarded that duty. You made the decision on the Russian interference. You couldn't have indicted the president on that, and you made the decision on that. But when it came to obstruction, you threw a bunch of stuff up against the wall to see what would stick. And that is fundamentally unfair.
Good point. Okay, how about this then? We'll use a whole lot of technical legal mumbo-jumbo and make it seem like we're saying that we're not recommending charges on obstruction because of the OLC guidelines, without actually saying that.
If we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. A president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. Those were the principles under which we operated, and from them we concluded that we would not reach a determination one way or the other about whether the president committed a crime.
Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I met with him along with Ed O'Callahan, who is the principal associate deputy, and he made it very clear several times that that was not his position. He was not saying that but for the OLC opinion he would have found a crime. He made it clear that he had not made the determination that there was a crime.
And I'd like to ask you, the reason again that you did not indict Donald Trump is because of OLC opinion stating that you cannot indict a sitting president, correct?
That is correct. I want to add one correction to my testimony this morning. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Liu, who said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion." That is not the correct way to say it. As we say in the report, and as I said at the opening, we did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime.
When we don't determine that the crime of obstruction was committed, we will say that the report also does not exonerate the president. That's the sneakiest and smarmiest language there is. Exoneration means something different to lay people than it does to lawyers. When the average Joe hears the word exoneration, he thinks it means the same thing as being innocent or being acquitted, but it doesn't. The actual legal definition of exoneration is to lift, remove the stain of being called out for blame, liability, or punishment. It is more than just freeing an accused person of the responsibility for a criminal or otherwise illegal or wrongful act. It is publicly stating that this accused should never have been accused in the first place. Exoneration is a much higher standard than acquittal. Acquittal is when someone is freed by a court, generally as a result of lack of evidence. In order to be exonerated, the prosecutor actually has to say that he felt that you never should have been accused in the first place. And it didn't matter what the evidence was. Under no circumstances were we ever gonna say that President Trump should have never been accused in the first place. Ha! If people had to be exonerated in order to be found not guilty, imagine how messed up that would be. Bob is accused of robbing a bank, but he's innocent. The prosecutor doesn't have any evidence that Bob robbed the bank, but the prosecutor doesn't like guys with handlebar mustaches. He thinks all guys with handlebar mustaches are shady, so he refuses to state that Bob should have never been charged in the first place. Innocent Bob is now in jail due to his questionable choices in facial hair. That's called being guilty until proven innocent. It's the exact opposite of our law. Being innocent until proven guilty. And it's exactly what we're doing to President Trump. Haha. Really, the only time we ever need to say that someone never should have been accused in the first place is when a person who's been convicted of a crime is officially cleared based on new evidence of innocence. Pardons can be forms of exoneration. President Trump never went to court and was found guilty, so there's no reason for him to need to be exonerated. When we say we do not exonerate him, what we are actually saying is nonsensical. But we are saying it because, and now this is the clever part, we are saying it because people that do not know what exoneration actually means will think that if President Trump wasn't exonerated, then that means he's guilty. When legally, we're not saying that at all. Ha 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 ha! Now marvel at the beauty of this carefully crafted statement from the Mueller Report. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. Since we all know that President Trump never needed to be and never would be exonerated, all this statement really says is that we didn't find that the president committed a crime. But that's not how people will read it. Ha 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 ha!
The Attorney General in the appointment order gave you powers and authorities that reside in the Attorney General. And what I'm putting up here is the United States Code. This is where the Attorney General gets his power, and the Constitution, and the annotated cases of these, which we've searched. And we got the criminal law textbook from your law school. Mr. Mueller, nowhere in these, because we had them scanned, is there a process or description on exonerate. If the Attorney General doesn't have the power to exonerate, then you don't have the power to exonerate. And so this is the part that I don't understand. If your report is to the Attorney General, you don't have to tell him that you're not exonerating the president.
No, we included in the report for exactly that reason. He may not know it, and he should know it.
So you believe that the attorney, Bill Barr, believes that somewhere in the hallways of the Department of Justice there's an office of exoneration?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, I believe he knows, and I don't believe you put that in there for Mr. Barr. I think you put that in there for exactly what I'm going to discuss next, and that is, so the Washington Post yesterday, when speaking of your report, the article said Trump could not be exonerated of trying to obstruct the investigation itself. Now, Mr. Mueller, what you know is that this can't say Mueller exonerated Trump, because you don't have the power or authority to exonerate Trump. You have no more power to declare him exonerated than you have the power to declare him Anderson Cooper. The statement about exoneration is misleading, and it's meaningless, and it colors this investigation.
I made a BM today. When we don't make any recommendation on obstruction, that'll force Attorney General Bill Barr to have to make the call. And when Barr dismisses the phony obstruction charges, the media will start smearing Barr, and they'll accuse him of being Trump's lapdog.
But what about Rod Rosenstein? He's gonna have to agree with Barr that there's no obstruction case too. Everyone knows Rosenstein hates Trump. Don't forget, McCabe said Rosenstein offered to wear a wire and wanted to remove the president via the 25th Amendment. Rosenstein even signed the last quarter-page FISA warrant renewal to spy on the Trump campaign. We're not going to be able to say that Rosenstein is Trump's lapdog. If Rosenstein doesn't believe there's an obstruction case, then there's no way on God's green earth that one exists. What are we gonna do about that, Andy?
Don't worry, dollface. Everyone will ignore that inconvenient little fact. The news media talking points are right over there. Or dare I say, the no talking points. Haha. Our message becomes, we did everything we could, but our hands were tied, see? We really wanted to make a recommendation on obstruction, but those pesky OLC guidelines got in the way. Then the congressional Democrats will view our message as a green light to start impeachment. You, in the corner, write up a report documenting every single time someone in the Trump campaign had contact with a Russian. If the president had Russian dressing on a salad, I want it in there. You were to take normal day-to-day interactions and paint them in the worst possible light. Make sure you leave out that the two Russians in the Trump Tower meeting were working with the Fusion GPS guy that helped create the dossier.
When you talk about the firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that.
Let me just help you. It was. It's not a trick question. Right? It was Fusion GPS.
And to not know who Fusion GPS is, give me a break. The reason why he didn't know because he wasn't really engaged in this investigation the whole time.
Don't mention that Glenn Simpson, the Fusion GPS guy, wrote up the talking points for the Russians in the Trump Tower meeting. Or that the email that Donald Trump Jr. received that was supposed to show the Russian government's support for candidate Trump mentioned the Crown Prosecutor of Russia, because the Russian government should know that there's no such thing as the Crown Prosecutor of Russia.
A operative for the Democrats was meeting with this Russian lawyer the day before and the day after the Trump Tower meeting, and yet that's not something you referenced. Do you have any basis as you sit here today to believe that Steele was lying?
As I said before, I'll say again, it's not my purview. Others are investigating what you
So it's not your purview to look into whether or not Steele's lying. It's not your purview to look into whether or not anti-Trump Russians are lying to Steele. And it's not your purview to look at whether or not Glenn Simpson was meeting with the Russians the day before and the day after you write 3,500 words about the Trump campaign meeting. Maybe the reason why there are this discrepancies in what you focused on is because the team was so biased.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Pledged to stop Trump.
Make Paul Manafort look bad for talking with Konstantin Kilimnik by omitting that Kilimnik was an intelligence source for the Obama administration. And be sure to selectively edit the Dowd transcript to make it look like Dowd obstructed justice.
They not only went after Donald Trump, they went after his lawyers. By taking out half my words, they changed the the tenor, and the contents of that conversation with Robert Kellner. And it's an outrage. And there's probably more of it.
The fundamental problem is, as I said, we've got to take your word. Your team faithfully, accurately, impartially, and completely described all of the underlying evidence in the Mueller Report. And we're finding more and more instances where this just isn't the case. And it's starting to look like, having desperately tried and failed to make a legal case against the president, You made a political case instead. You put it in a paper sack, lit it on fire, dropped it on our porch, rang the doorbell, and ran.
Yes, I understand that you're innocent until proven guilty, and that if you're not going to bring charges, you don't turn around and release a one-sided report that smears innocent people. But today, we're standing the Constitution on its head.
Robert Mueller stood the Constitution on its head.
It was not the special counsel's job to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence or to exonerate him, because the bedrock principle of our justice system is a presumption of innocence. It exists for everyone. Everyone is entitled to it, including sitting presidents. You didn't follow the special counsel regulations. It clearly says, write a confidential report about decisions reached. You wrote 180 pages. 180 pages about decisions that weren't reached, about potential crimes that weren't charged. By doing that, you managed to violate every principle and the most sacred of traditions about prosecutors not offering extra prosecutorial analysis about potential crimes that aren't charged. Americans need to know this as they listen to the Democrats and socialists on the other side of the aisle, as they do dramatic readings from this report, that Volume 2 of this report was not authorized under the law to be written. I agree with the chairman this morning when he said Donald Trump is not above the law. He's not. But he damn sure shouldn't be below the law, which is where Volume 2 of this report puts him.
You, in the corner, add that list of 10 possible obstruction charges to the report. It'll be like a Rorschach ink block test. People who want to see crimes will see crimes. If we're really lucky, the Democrats will be able to use this to impeach President Trump, and then hopefully none of our friends will wind up in the pokey. Here, Mueller, sign this.
Tell President Reagan the British are coming.
It's perfect. The people will be left confused and fighting amongst each other once we tell them that while we do not recommend obstruction charges, we also do not exonerate the president. And this plan all works perfectly, just so long as Robert Mueller never has to testify.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and please share it. You can help us continue to fight in the war against disinformation by donating at paypal.me/rightleftofcenter and at subscribestar.com/rightleftofcenter. I'm Right from Right Left of Center, and if you're watching, you're probably right too.